Okay, good evening. I am going to call the Town of Essex Select Board meeting to order for Monday, October 17th. Andy isn't with us this evening, so you have to bear with me. Up first, additions, changes to the agenda. Does staff have anything?
None from staff.
Anything from Select Board? Kendall, anything?
No.
Okay. With no changes, we do not need to approve the agenda, so on to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a portion of the agenda for members of the public to raise concerns or speak to anything that is not currently on the agenda. We ask that you please be civil, please be brief. If you would like to speak, if you're in the room, just raise your hand. If you're online, please raise your electronic hand. This can be found under the reactions button on Zoom. Hit reaction, and then you will see raise hand. I don't see anyone in the room. I don't see anyone online. So, seeing none, we will move right on ahead to our public hearing.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that we open the public hearing on the public nuisance ordinance.
A motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of opening the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
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 And motion passes unanimously 4-0. Okay, so in our packet, we did have a copy of the public nuisance hearing. Greg, do you want to give an introduction on what we're seeing this evening?
Sure. So the public nuisance ordinance that's in your packet today represents a change from the last meeting you had. Basically removed the aggressive panhandling section based on some additional research and feedback from the town attorney. We were hoping to be able to bring it up for passage tonight, final passage for the select board, although did some more research based on some feedback we got, and we should be going through and so the public nuisance ordinance, it's a new ordinance, but it also supersedes some other sections in the ordinance already, so those sections would be removed. So rather than passing it tonight, we need to make a list of those sections, present them, we'll warn the public hearing again, bring it back for probably the November 7th meeting to consider final passage. So those are the changes that staff has identified. Of course, if there's others from the public that the select board wants to entertain, we would wrap those in as needed. But from the staff perspective, it's just going back and cleaning up some of the other ordinances that would be no longer relevant with this latest adoption.
So since this is a public hearing, I'd like to go to members of the public first and then bring it back to the board. Are there any members of the public in the room who would like to comment on the proposed public nuisance ordinance? Okay, I am not seeing any. Online, I do see Lorraine Zaloom. Your hand is raised. You have the floor.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I just briefly read through and I saw that part on nudity, and I was just wondering if there was consideration to breastfeeding in public, as well as potentially someone wearing a G-string at, like, they were swimming at Indian Brook, or those are the only two things I thought might be conflicting.
I
Thanks.
do see Chief Hogue online. I did ask about the breastfeeding question and was informed by Lieutenant Kissinger that state law would supersede the language in this ordinance, so that would not be an issue. And Chief, did you have any input on the question of G-strings?
So first I apologize for not being there in person tonight. Lieutenant Kissinger and I are actually in Dallas, Texas at the Chiefs conference. So the only input that I have is that that would be considered a bathing suit technically. And I don't believe that that would be covered under this ordinance. I believe that that would be an exception because it's showing the buttocks and not any of the other parts of the human body. So.
Thank you.
Right, but it specifically says buttocks in that. That's why I asked.
It'd also be covered, Lorraine. Indian Brook has its own set of ordinances that describe what people should be wearing while in the park.
Thanks, you guys.
Welcome.
Got it.
Next online, I see Patty Davis.
Yes, hi. I just barely tuned in and something about G-string. So whatever I missed, you don't have to tell me. It's okay. I just have a question about how recent and our up-to-date animal dog ordinance is. When it comes to be specific, because I did my research, 4.04.050, which is dogs running at large, penalty for violation, and is it true it's a 1996 ordinance?
Patty, this is a hearing on the public nuisance ordinance, but to answer your question very quickly, I do believe that we made changes and adopted changes to that ordinance late last summer.
About a year ago.
Oh, great. Okay. Because is this public comment or am I too late?
It's the public hearing on the public nuisance ordinance.
Oh, okay. So I guess I better not say anything. My dog was attacked yesterday, that's all. So I just walked away because I don't know what to do. So I will lower my hand.
Sorry to hear that, Patty, and thank you.
Can I just give her some info on that real quick?
Absolutely.
If she hasn't done so, have her call the police department. We'll put her in contact with the animal control people, and they can walk her through doing a report for the dog bite.
Thank you, Chief. Any other public comment during our public hearing on the public nuisance ordinance? None in the room, none online.
No, nope.
Margaret Smith.
Hi, I'm sorry. The screen looks different today, and I had trouble finding the hand raising section. So I've been concerned for a while for the noise ordinance because in my neck of the woods the noise is getting worse, and so hopefully. And I did leave a question for Lieutenant Kissinger on his phone, but clearly he didn't get it, concerning the policy for mufflers that used to be you got a ticket if you didn't have a muffler or if it wasn't working right. And now there's just an awful lot of cars going by that are really noisy. So I couldn't tell from reading if that was covered. There was a lot of the chart about the amount of noise, section E maybe, residential receiving premises. So table A, yeah, and so I'm not sure I understood that, but I'll have to ask somebody for clarification at a different time.
Well, I think this would be a great time to get clarification since we are on the public nuisance ordinance.
Okay.
I know, I was trying to find the section. Chief, are you chiming in?
Yeah, so it'd be section B 7 that would cover some of the mufflers, like the backfiring. Some of the loud mufflers, they're coming from the factories, the manufacturer of the cars. So we would be able to enforce those because those are something that is installed by the manufacturer. Same thing with some of the motorcycles that have louder mufflers. But we would be able to get a lot of the cars that rev their cars up to intentionally cause their mufflers to backfire. We've had a lot of complaints about that. I think that's where this ordinance would come in, is to prevent those or address those vehicles that intentionally cause their vehicles to backfire.
So I noticed that when cars are getting off of Alder Lane onto either Route 15 or 128, sometimes the traffic makes it really hard to find a gap to get onto Route 15. And cars will, and motorcycles will gun their engines a lot. I don't know if that kind of thing is a consideration.
That necessarily would fall under this ordinance. Like I said, if it's a muffler that's DOT approved, there's nothing that we could really do about that. But the intentional act of causing your vehicle to backfire by causing a different compression would be something that we would address. That causes the exploding or rattling grating of a muffler when it backfires.
Right. Yeah, I'm not talking about that so much as you know, a lot of motorcycles and some cars they just like to rev up their engines to make them sound big and important. And that often happens when cars are trying to get onto Route 15. And it's partly a traffic issue, but so that's not a backfiring issue. That's just a loud engine noise. I don't know if I'm being clear or not.
And I don't think that is covered under this ordinance. It's only if the owner or the car has modifications that would cause that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Lorraine, I see your hand up again.
Sorry to bother you again. The modified mufflers then, because it sounded like Rob just said DOT approved. Do we know what's DOT approved for modified mufflers? Is it, because when I'm just Googling it, it looks like it's per state, is it? Or that it's related, which is also related to sounds and increasing sounds intentionally? Do I know what the law is on that?
That's nothing, Lorraine, that as officers we would be certified to do. That's something that the Vermont inspections, when they do their inspections, would certify that those are legal mufflers installed. I'll give you an example, like a loud muffler. There are like the Dodge Chargers, the Ford Mustangs. They have mufflers that are loud intentionally from the manufacturers. And those are things that we would be able to address.
But if they took an aftermarket muffler that was modified and it did that sound that sounds like a gunfire, that consistent gunfire sound, how do you know when it's?
So Lorraine, the conversation that I had recently with a DMV inspector in regards to inspection stations, because this has been a problem in the city as well, is that the governor changed the rules a couple of years ago now, where it is no longer a regulatory exclusion where someone who goes in and has an aftermarket muffler on their vehicle. It is no longer an exclusionary thing to not be issued an inspection. It is now an advisory subject, so that the inspection station can only advise them that their muffler does not meet specifications. So this is where we start running into, somebody else asked about issuing tickets for mufflers and that type of thing. This is where we start running into problems as law enforcement, because the officer can't verify what those, what the muffler is or anything like that without climbing underneath the car. And we're being subjective in that we're stopping that vehicle based on what we believe is a violation of not having a muffler or not standard muffler. So what we have to rely on is an ordinance like this where the person is causing that noise, and we can see that person is causing the excessive noise. So we're not focusing on the piece of equipment, we're focusing on the behavior instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when I'm hearing something like that, there's a couple of particular cars that I sit behind, and it's, when the light turns, it sounds like it's intentional, because it's not consistent. It's just at certain times. So that is
Correct.
controlled by the driver, if I'm understanding you right?
Yeah, most of that can be controlled by the driver. Obviously, they're either heavy footed or they're doing it in other ways where they're controlling that, that muffler.
Backfire.
I'm not completely familiar with how those work, but I know exactly the ones you're talking about. And most of that is controlled by the behavior of the driver.
So it's like that backfire kind of pop,
Yes.
loud pop. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So that would fall under this ordinance.
That is correct.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other public input? Seeing none, I'm going to bring this back to the select board for discussion. Any comments or changes, amendments that the board would like to see?
I have none.
Kendall, go ahead.
I would just make the comment that in section 6-11-050, where it speaks about public urination and defecation, that if the town does not provide some sort of facility at their parks, that you're going to have people doing that. And I would just note that. I would also note that several towns that have fire ordinances allow open fires without a permit when the ground is snow covered. So I would just mention that as consideration. Thank you.
Close the public hearing first.
Before you get on to the next item.
Okay. Right. Any other input?
No, I'm just reading the open fires real quick. About that. Yeah, it's just not very clear because I'm seeing what Kendall's saying now, and I guess I read over it, but in 611, 130, it's item C. And it reads as residents wishing to burn brush, grass, natural, unpainted, unstained, untreated dimensional lumber, wood product shall obtain a permit online using the manner. Obtain a permit online using the manner online or in person. That doesn't make sense the way that reads right there. And then it goes on to say, specified by the fire department prior to burning. And it says the times of burning will be allowed by the fire warden or fire chief. So I wonder if there's.
That's so the warden can say it's too dry. to
Well,
burn.
right, but I'm also wondering is if the warden can say it's winter and what would open fire. I don't know. I guess
Oh, wait,
I
wait.
just realized that there when I read that is that it says you shall obtain a permit online using the manner online or in person. You should be able to obtain a permit in person as well.
Right.
I don't know if that's a typo or something worth changing.
Speak up.
I believe that's a typo, and we can probably correct that since we're going to have to bring it back anyways and just take out that first online.
Yeah.
I'll look to the chief and Lieutenant Kissinger
Yep.
to confirm, but that makes sense to me.
Good point.
And then to Kendall's point too, I don't know if there's could be clarification there about winter burning, additional burning should be towards the warden rather than permit, or if it's permit only for open fires. Just thought we got a week. Right?
A good point. Any other input from the select board?
I guess just a question, kind of for you, Greg. Would a change prohibit or slow the final passage for next week. We don't.
I think changing the fire section beyond just the deleting the online. First online, I think adding something about burning during the winter probably would, because I want to check with the fire chief and get his take on that
Okay.
before we do something like that.
So can we just go ahead with the typo change and then leave the rest of it unless something comes up that's adamant to be changed? Improve it
Yeah, we're gonna have to warn it again anyways,
yeah.
because we're gonna have to delete those other sections where this is redundant. It creates redundancies. But I think that's when you make your motion, you're gonna, assuming that's the motion you make tonight, you're gonna make the motion to
Change.
give a passage with those changes.
Okay.
And I would be hesitant to make the change about
Anything
open
else?
burnings
Yeah,
because
just
we don't have the input from the fire
typo.
chief at this point. So to get that and come back and then propose a change would extend it an additional meeting.
But
Just don't
that does
wanna
not-
slow it down any.
Yeah, that doesn't prohibit us from making those
Good
changes
change.
going forward in the future, though. So,
Perfect.
so hearing no other input from the select board, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the public nuisance ordinance.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that we close this public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Madam
yes.
Chair, I'd like to make the motion that the select board pass the public nuisance ordinance, including the deletion of superseded sections elsewhere in the municipal ordinances, and authorize staff to warn a public hearing to consider final passage of the ordinance on November 7th, 2022, with the corrections aforementioned.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion of that motion?
Just want to make clear that the other discussions, other changes as discussed includes that deletion of the online thing.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Next up, discussion about the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options. I believe that's going to be done in executive.
Correct.
So we will skip over 6B to 6C. Discussion and potential action on the memorandum of understanding, lease agreement, and municipal management agreement between the town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction related to the Tree Farm Management Group. In the packet, there was a memorandum. Greg, I saw that you had, for a little bit of background, the town sent over proposed edits to the city council after our meeting on October 3rd. The city council reviewed the edits on October 12th. Those responses were not included in the packet, but Greg, I believe that you have an update on those discussions.
Correct. Just got the proposed changes from the city council last night. Ally and I had a chance to review them today, and as they're pertaining to lease agreements, we think those are best discussed in executive session.
Okay. So I believe that takes us onto the consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda, is there any discussion? Well, we didn't pull anything out, so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Any discussion?
I have a question. Does that include the minutes of October 3rd?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I will abstain. I will abstain as I was not present.
Can you abstain without a conflict?
Not sure about that. Kendall, you are able to vote even if you're not present on the minutes.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, you
Okay.
are. Yep.
Okay. Then I will vote aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Moving along to the reading file. Board member comments?
I'd like to thank Darren Schibler for his wonderful years of service to the town and let him know we will miss him.
Yes. Yes, yes.
I second that. I think he's done some awesome work for a lot of different paths in the town, I should say. And his vision is really one that I think Essex should stick with. And I have a second board member comment that
Sure.
I don't know if it's written down somewhere, but maybe we should have a clear understanding of what we can abstain from in the board when voting, because I tried to abstain twice for conflict of voting for myself. I was told I had to vote, but I'm able to find a ruling on what our rule is for voting.
I believe it's in the meeting procedure.
I'll double check the rules and regulations, and if it's not there, I would probably look to Robert's rules.
Because I guess it had been changed not too many years ago, but there might be some
Yep, that would be
disparity in it. So I'm just curious where to find that.
Yep. That would be good to know in review. But I guess just a general reminder, if you do feel that you have a conflict, state it early.
Before, yeah.
Yep. And that won't lead you into trouble.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
I would just note that we also lost a very valuable road public works crew, and I wish them well in their new position.
Thank you, Kendall.
I'll just put in a plug for the Town of Essex newsletter that's in the packet today. This is the second edition that's out there. It's just another way we're trying to get word out to our public and our residents about stuff happening in the town. So please take a look, go up, register, sign up online. We also have hard copies out this month for the first time. Tammy Getchell is putting it all together. She's going to be distributing the hard copies at a few locations and then tracking to see where they get picked up so we can adjust accordingly. But just one more way for us to try to notify our residents about what the town is doing.
Oh, great. I like it. I did just want to point folks to the information concerning the 1% local option tax. There was a lot of public feedback on that recently. So please go ahead and read that section of the reading file. It does contain a printout that you can share with neighbors, local businesses, so on and so forth. And also board and committee vacancies, great ways to get involved. Check it out. After the reading file, does anybody have the motions up for?
Yep. I move that the select board enter executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A2 and to include the town manager.
Could you also include the recreation director?
In this one too?
It's the same. You're going in for the
And
same
recreation
reason both
director.
times. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously.
I move that the select board enter into an executive session to discuss the negotiating and securing of real estate. Wait a minute. Did I do this?
John, I'm comfortable with you just making the one motion because both,
Okay.
it's the same topic.
I was gonna say it's the same
yeah.
thing. All right. I'm sorry.
We can discuss
So
both topics
moved.
under the
Okay.
discussion of.
I got it.
Yep. Okay.
I'm looking at that going, I just said that.
Okay, so will we be back?
We may, depending on farm stuff. If there's, for instance, in the past, you've directed staff to send comments back
Yep.
to city council. So that
Okay.
might happen tonight.
So we will head upstairs and you don't need to stay. We'll huddle like we usually do.